My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. A day after the first round of the National Hockey League Draft was completed last night in Vegas. We'll have second through seven rounds, the seventh round today. It's Judd, it's AJ, and let's get right to it because I believe that the guy on the other side of the screen is extremely excited, as are the Wild. AJ, you started doing prospects and potential slot positions for the draft shortly after Christmas. And I remember in every one that we did, because we did like two or three of these, you had a young man, defenseman from DU, Zeev Buium, ranked in the top, I think it was top 5, but it was certainly around 5 or 6. It was high. And we come away from the first round last night with the Wild having traded the 13th pick to the Flyers. And they also put in a third-round pick in 2025 to move up only one spot to 12 to take Buium. Your reaction as the draft expert on this show to a kid who has won, a World Junior title last year. He won an NCAA title, all as the second youngest player in NCAA Division I hockey last season.
Yeah, Judd, this is a massive move for the Wild. My night last night, so I was on boyfriend duty. It was my girlfriend's birthday, so we were out at dinner, and it
still
seems
texting though. You were still texting.
I was still texting. Trust me, she loves me, so she knows that this was a pretty big night.
Happy birthday to her.
Yes, absolutely. So we had the draft on in the car, and I was kind of reacting to the Seneca pick to the Ducks at 3. That was wild, and Wild fans right now, I do want to say you should be thanking teams like the Anaheim Ducks, because without that little wrench in the system, who knows how the rest of the night would have gone. Beckett Seneca at 3rd overall absolutely changed the course of the night. There is frankly no reason he should have been going 3rd overall, but clearly Verbeek and the Ducks see something in him, and credit to them. But that is an interesting pick as the night progresses. Of course, for what seems like the 3rd year in a row, we're out to dinner for her birthday. It's a restaurant that has 0 cell service. I cannot get any updates. I feel like I'm 20 minutes behind on everything. I'm asking other people what's going on.
All got to pick a better restaurant next year.
I know.
The birthday restaurant has to change next year, and it has to have the birthday celebration. Sort of bad timing, but it's fine. Like it doesn't derail anything. But the cell service is a deal breaker. You tell her next year it's got to be at a place where we got cell service.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to do a little bit better scouting on the actual restaurant than some of the prospects. But the Wild trade up, and you were correct. I've had Zeev Buium on my list since we did our first kind of roundabout for these around the holiday season. And I had him kind of like fringe top 10. That second half of the season with the Pioneers, he was an absolute superstar. This guy won the NCHC Frozen Face-Off with Denver at the XL Energy Center. I fell in love with this guy on the blue line after he scored, unfortunately, a game-winning overtime goal against my St. Cloud State Huskies. He goes on to win the national championship as one of the best teams. He is the first Pioneer in Denver franchise, like the past 40 years, to record 50 points. He is an offensive superstar, but he's more than just that. This is a guy he's a fantastic skater. He's very heady. He's got incredible hockey IQ. His shot is well above NHL average. His passing ability is well above NHL average. His compete level, and that's the thing. A lot of these, you hear this word thrown around, this phrase, like the compete level. You know, he's got that drive. And frankly, I sure would hope so for a guy drafted in the top 15, top 10, top 5 in the first round of the NHL draft. But it does matter because David Carl, head coach of the Denver Pioneers, he had this quote talking about, like, you know, somebody of Zeev Buium's skill set. They come into college, and sometimes you run into those guys where they're very complacent and they say, you know what, I can just kind of make it work. I'll get my points, I'll get my assists, I'll get my goals and my power play time, and I'm fine with that. Zeev Buium, he's recognized that the physicality and defensive game that he has isn't quite up to snuff, and he wants to improve on that. So he's been out there every day working with Denver. All past season, he's like shown, like, I really need to beef up. I need to get more defensively sound because I need to round out my game. So this is a guy that, one, mindset fits everything I think the Minnesota Wild are trying to build and everything that they have in the future. Bill Guerin, Judd Brackett were very high on him. I had him as my third best defensive prospect. So I had him number 7 on my board, but behind Artem Levshinov, who went to the Blackhawks second overall, and Sam Dickinson, who I thought fell a little bit behind Yakemchuk and Parekh, but he's more of a kind of boring, defensively sound guy, whereas the other two have more offensive ability. So I see why teams probably want to go with that skill. And when I say this, you might be thinking, Judd, well, he's coming to the show right away. He's getting, like, get him on the roster. No, he's going to go back to Denver. He's going to play another year.
Yep.
Which is, I think, just fine. You don't want to rush anything like that. He still has, like we just talked about, he's trying to develop that defensive game. So this is not you're going to get him right first night in October. He's in the lineup. No, you're going to have him go back to Denver. I plan to go up to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center when the Pioneers come to town to take on the St. Cloud State Huskies.
Kiss the Huskies' asses. That's why you're going.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they're going to run rampant all over the Huskies on that Olympic sized sheet of ice. But no, it'll be fun to watch them eventually, but this is a fantastic pick, and to move up one spot, I think you could not afford to miss this. Rutger McGroarty is one thing, trading a 13th overall pick for him.
Right.
But for a team that I think, like, we see what Faber just added to this blue line, but besides that, they haven't been thrilled with a lot of their defensive prospects as of late. Starved for some guy who can quarterback a power play, really lead it offensively from the blue line.
Yes.
This is a must-need addition, and you couldn't afford to not get him. So this move is fantastic. Great job by the Minnesota Wild, Billy Guerin and crew. It's an A+ on the night in my mind.
So Zeev is, at least what the listing is 6 feet, 183 pounds. So he's not a huge guy. This is not going to be a size help, but he can definitely, as you just said, run a power play. He can do a lot of things. I also like this. So I was going through the ages of the defensemen, right, this morning on this team now, and you really see where things are going here. All right. For instance, Zach Bogosian, who is a short-term guy, turns 34 on July 15th. Brodin, who I think can play for a while because his style of game, I don't think there's a ton of wear and tear. Although he's been hurt, in fairness, he turns 31 on July 12th. If Declan Chisholm has a future here, which is entirely possible, he's 24. Brock Faber will be 22 on August 22nd, and there was a report that that Bill Guerin has engaged, and vice versa, Faber's agent on contract talks, because he is going to break the bank at some point very soon. The last two guys on the blue line, though, so Jake Middleton is 28, and I think this team likes him. It's, again, a guy that we've talked about. Could you trade him? I don't know if they will. I don't know that they want to. But then the most interesting one, and this is where a guy that can move the puck and potentially pair with Brock long term, and by that I mean 8 years, 10 years, right? On the first pairing, Jared Spurgeon is 34 now, and he's coming back off 2 surgeries. And I know he's going to work his ass off. That's not the point. But I mean, he's a smaller guy. He's been hurt, and he is pushing 35 years old. So I think if there was one area going into the draft last night that we all said, boy, it'd be nice to see some prospects added here or there, because the Wild has some good prospects. There's no question about it. This is not the Chuck Fletcher days where the farm system, especially in Iowa, was barren. But
we're all getting revved up over Michael Granlund.
Yeah, I think we all would have said defense. And here's the interesting thing about last night's draft, Age. Yeah. So, as you said, the Blackhawks took a defenseman at 2. But then starting with pick 7, the draft went like this: defenseman, center, defenseman, defenseman in Dickinson, and then Buium. So from picks 7 to 12, we had 5 of 6 picks were defensemen. So yes, if it sounds like from what everyone is saying that Buium's fall was definitely a surprise. But I think that this is probably an A+. And Age, I saw a comment thread on Twitter last night, and it was a good point too. If you look at the 3 most recent drafts in town here, the Vikings in April, and then obviously the Wolves, and then the Wild, both in recent days, you look at the aggressiveness, of going and getting what what you wanted, not allowing it to fall to you. And to your point, yes, the Wild only went up one pick, but that's still I would far prefer that, because my fear, and I think their fear, was that Buium fell that far and they thought we could wait till 13. But if we do, there's a fighting chance someone's going to call the Flyers, make the trade there, and jump us. So as far as the Wolves, the Vikings, and now Bill Guerin go, I like the aggressiveness too. I love the fact that they identified a player who fell far enough to where they thought that they wouldn't have to certainly give up the farm to get him, but then he fell and they said, okay, it's time to stop that fall. And you feel far better this morning about where the blue line is going than when you went to bed on Thursday night.
Yeah, and to your point, you brought up, you go, let's see here, you Kemchuk, then it goes Katten to Seattle, but then you go Parekh, Salayev, Dickinson, Buium. After that, you go center, right wing. The next defenseman off the board is Adam Jiricek to the St. Louis Blues. And let me tell you, Judd, the drop-off there in the tier levels between a Zeev Buium and Adam Jiricek, it's massive. Jiricek, I think at one point you would have had him probably in that discussion where the Wild at 13, that's a really good pick, but based off his injury that he had sustained at the World Juniors this last holiday season, it stunts his growth. You don't know where it's back. It's from my understanding, a lower body injury. So you don't really know how that stunts anything. And then after that, the next guy is Igor Surin. And it's like that. I mean, that's even a gap there between him and like a Stian Solberg. So Zeev Buium, you mentioned the aggressiveness, the kind of the draft. It's nice to see guys being able to recognize we know what we need, we know who we want, we have a list, and we covet them. And I think that this is what Judd Bragan and Bill Guerin said to Michael Russo of The Athletic is we got a guy who we covet. And just because he was the last name of that group doesn't mean he's like they got stuck just because, that similar to how you can maybe argue maybe the Vikings, they got stuck with JJ McCarthy, and some people might, because maybe they tried to trade up for a Drake May. This is a guy that I think probably should have gone in the top 10. He is a very well-rounded. I think some other franchises are maybe arguing their selections at D have a higher potential ceiling, but as of right now, where they're at, he is a few steps above. So it's a fantastic selection. I mean, this there should be no reason to feel down or feel like they got duped or, they sold the farm. It's a 3rd round pick next year. And I love that because we've seen them now do this 2 out of the last 3 years. And you're muted, I believe, right now, Judd. But they did this to trade up to get Wallstead. They moved up a few picks in order to select him. Mm-hmm. It's a 3rd round pick is a 3rd round pick. I know the NFL values picks a little bit more, and probably a 3rd round pick there.
They'll get one back.
That's the thing. You're going to get them back.
They'll get a 3rd round pick back. So there's no question about that. Yeah. And I just like I like the fact now that as you look at the prospects, right. And the guys who, like Brock, he's still young. You really see a direction here. And this is a good use, in my opinion, as well, of the place that you're currently at, right? Build up the prospect pool, get yourself to a point where you're not trying to, bring in a guy from the Hershey AHL team to Iowa because you're damn desperate. Like, this all feels like it's building in a generally positive direction. Do you think Buium, there's any chance, speaking of when he might join this team, because I'm with you, he's going back to school. Mm-hmm. Do you think he is a candidate to join the team after his sophomore season ends in March or April? Or do you probably not see him being here at all until the start of the following, so until the start of the 25-26 season?
I think the one thing about him you have to remember is this past season, he was the 2nd youngest player in the NCAA. Behind
Macklin, right?
To Macklin.
Who's like 12.
Yeah, he is he doesn't even have a driver's license yet. So that, to keep this in mind, he is young. Do I think skill-wise they maybe could bring him up after a single season, his sophomore year? Yes, I think they probably could, but I would not be surprised based on also what we're seeing with Jesper Wallstedt, where there doesn't seem to be that urgency to really get him up in here, they want him to develop. They know they have a good, well-rounded prospect who's, I think, really good offensively, but it's the defensive aspect where he needs a lot of work. And I think this is a guy that is driven to where he's going to want to improve. He's going to want to prove, hey, Bill Guerin, you have to bring me up, right? But I don't think he's going to maybe make that giant leap in one season at Denver. I bet you it's going to be one of those middle of his junior year. You're like, he's coming up. Like he's going to get the call up. So,
okay,
I would bet you it's 2 years after he wraps up his junior year, and by that point, hopefully.
Oh wow, okay.
I just think it'd be pushing it. It depends on kind of what they do, because from all the rumblings we hear, are they extending a Jake Middleton? How much room is going to be in that defensive core?
Yeah.
Where
if he's ready, you make room. I don't want to be playing favorites with, vets that I like. Like that's the tightrope. Now I am completely with you, because from what his coach at Denver, Carl, said, and I love this, he is working and has worked very hard on improving himself defensively. So until the team feels he's there defensively, and look, he could stay. I mean, Brock stayed. Faber clearly could have been rushed. He wasn't, and guess what? It looks like it paid off, right?
Yes.
So I got no problem with that. The only thing is I wouldn't want a guy blocked because I like a veteran, but that's a small thing. I think that when you look at the direction, and the key guy that we probably don't talk enough about is Judd Brackett. Like if you look at what he has done, and he had a really good background with the Canucks, and there were a lot of people excited about that. And I will say this for him. I think it's paid off. I think he's done a really good job. And that's not to sell Bill short. That's fine. He's his boss. But if you look at what this team has done now in transitioning, and that's why I continued to say last year, and I'll say it again for this season, I don't know if they're a playoff team. I'm not even sure I really care that much. What I care about is, are they headed in the right direction? Because if nothing else, Age, and I know that these guys have been gone for a while now, but this has to be an official turning of the chapter at some point from Parise and Suter. And until they're off the books, or they're not off the books, but after this year, the enormous cap hits are gone. Mm-hmm. Until those are gone, I think that you're in sort of the same chapter trying to get through it, right?
Yes.
But when you're talking about, okay, next season, the cap hits come way down, I think you're now in a position where you need to turn the page. It can't be this, well, we're trying to compete, but we really, so like, this is what excites me here. You're going to have at some point in time a new goaltender. If you have now a blue line that's starting to look like it could be really young, and it'll need some help, but there's some definitely things to be excited about forwards wise. So I think that the Wild is positioning itself in large part because probably what Brackett is doing with the scouting department, positioning itself really well. And it feels like it's been a long time since the scouting department has positioned this franchise really well. Maybe never before this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. I mean, I'm fully convinced that right now they are swimming against the tide. Like they're trying to swim upstream. They have the dead cap, and they're trying to be competitive too, because they've made the playoffs in this period and whatnot, and they've made some moves to try to be competitive and make a run. It hasn't worked out, but now with Judd Brackett and crew drafting these like analytically sound and like skilled prospects, you have kind of these guys waiting in the wing, and you're like, okay, we know we've got maybe like a mile more. We've got a little bit longer left, and eventually you're going to make a turn at some point. That creek is going to turn. And you're going to go downstream, and that all that momentum is going to be coming through, and the dead cap is gone. You're going to be having some of these older guys probably come off the books, and you can open up the wings for these younger guys who are young and exciting and fast, and you can make a splash in free agency. You can go ahead and spend Bill Guerin, and you can get that elite, scoring winger who is 28 years old, who's fresh off of his 6-year deal with whoever. It's going to happen, and to your point, yes, it's going to probably not be this year. I'm expecting something similar where they're going to win the games they probably should, but they're also going to lose a lot. treading water in a sense. So
yes, I agree. Yes, that's a perfect way to put it.
And that's fine, as long as they're not drowning, because you could be sitting with all this happening and then missing on picks and trying to like take stabs left and right, but they're not doing that. They're getting their cards set so that they can make a move when they're able to. And I think that's after this season. So it's kind of just a waiting game, unfortunately.
So when you saw this, how much satisfaction did you feel, AJ Fredrickson, when you saw that your guy who you were pushing for months, Tij Iginla, not only went top 10, he went 6 to the Utah Hockey Club. I remember you told me that the first time around Christmas that you ran through the exercise, you said he's like rated at the time like 14th or something like that, but he deserves much more. And you said if the Wild can get him, they should be thrilled. It feels like in the last month or so, the rest of the league caught on. And I mean, he's Jarome Iginla's kid, and they sound like the same player. So you were right. But did the fact that Utah took him at 6 surprise you at all by this point?
I was surprised that he actually did go 6 because it was just slotting up so well for like the Flames at 9 to draft him. I fully expected a top 10 selection for him. And I'll give credit to Utah because I think if you get it, like a lot of analysts and scout people are talking about the Wild getting the steal of the draft of Buium at 12. I think if Iginla drops to like that 9, 10, 11, he's probably being talked about in the same breath. But Utah, I think they recognized well that this is a guy you need. He's got that NHL pedigree with his dad. He's going to be a successful hockey player in the NHL, and not just like an everyday lineup type of guy where you're like he bounces around. Maybe he's going to be an impact player for that Utah Hockey Club. And God, I don't have kids. I'm not even anywhere close to having kids, but that's what I imagine. That's what I imagine being being like a proud father. This is a guy that disrespected as like okay, maybe he'll be a first rounder too. You know what? Yeah, he'll be a mid-round, first-round pick, and then it's okay, he's kind of getting up there. Could he he is a top 10 pick. He's a 6th overall pick. Yep. Utah, you selected a fantastic hockey player in Tij Iginla.
And they've got now, because of the change, not just in where they're going to play their games, but ownership as well. They've got money to spend, and they're going to spend it. They could be dangerous. Okay, next thing. So a couple of reports that came out from the draft. First one, Russo reports that Rutger McGroarty, who's being shopped by the Jets, and it sounds like the Jets want to trade him ASAP. It sounds like, because he's told the Jets he doesn't want to play for them. They've basically said, we're not sure that we have a place for you yet. His friends are all turning pro, and he's not. What did you think of that report? I said on the show with Jesse last week that I would trade my first round pick for him. Now, that being said, it also looked like the Wild did tell the Jets we would make the trade if if one of the guys we covet is not there. And in the case of Buium, he was there. But what did you make of the pursuit there? Because it does intrigue me. And McGroarty is a player I like a lot. And I think if you were to do his draft as a redraft, he goes significantly higher probably than he did to the Jets.
Yeah, if they can't make the trade up to 12 and Zeev Buium goes there, I think the gap between a Buium at 12 to like a Michael Brandsteg-Nygaard is, you would rather trade that pick at 13 for Rutger McGroarty because you've already kind of seen what he can do. To your point, he's like, if you redraft, he's easily a top 10, arguably a top 5 pick. And he kind of checks off a couple boxes that the Wild do need and want for the future. So the report of them kind of having that in their back pocket as maybe a prior agreement or something, if the chips fall a certain way, I would have been fine with that if they couldn't get a guy like Buium. But I think every day of the week, I would rather have the higher end defensive prospect, given how the organization looks right now, rather than Rutger McGroarty, personally.
Yeah, he intrigues me a lot. I couldn't decide if, did the Wild at some point in time before the draft started put that pick on the table to the Jets? Did they tell the Jets, hey, we'll do it if a guy doesn't fall to us that we like a lot?
And Cheveldayoff was active on the phone from what I hear. A couple picks before on
around picks 12 and 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Wild definitely reacted on 12 to something the Flyers were doing. I don't think that was, and I love this, but I don't think that was some type of fluke. I think they got wind of the fact that with Buium falling, somebody was trying to come up and get him. I find it intriguing that the Wild pursued McGroarty, and I don't know if that's going to be possible. I don't know if the Jets will trade him within the division or hell, the conference, because he could bite you in the ass for a long time, and he's going to be. I think being told, "Hey, we don't think you're ready yet," or "We don't have room for you," is a heck of a incentive for a kid, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, that intrigued me. So I like that one. Here's one I want to throw at you that Russo had as well this morning that I saw. It intrigues me as well, but not probably for the reasons that Rutger McGroarty does. All right. There is a Mike reported that the Wild have shown interest in Patrik Laine, who has demanded a trade from Columbus. If half of his $8.7 million cap hit is paid, obviously, by the Jackets, because at least for this year, the Wild's still in salary cap hell, for the next 2 years. Here's my thought. Now, first of all, Patrik is coming off what was a miserable year. He got hurt, and then at some point, what was it, in January, I think he went into the league's substance abuse program. But if you look at his season, 18 games, 6 goals, 9 points. And it was not, I should correct myself, it was not the substance abuse program. It was the player assistance program. Okay. And he checked in on January 24th. Did not play again. Here's my problem with it. If you're going to get the Jackets to pick up substantial cap room, the price tag for the player goes much higher. Laine is, in his prime, was a great player, really good. Goal scorer, heck of a player. I don't think at this point in time, though, that if I have to give up any type of return of significance, I have an interest in him. What do you think?
I'm fully out. It's like if they're picking up half, that I feel like you're doing them a favor by taking him. Like that's the almost a future considerations going back, Judd.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
He didn't drop below 30 goals scored in a season until his 4th year in the NHL, but since then it's gone 28. He played 1 game in 2020, which was a weird year. I'll say that, weird year. And then he's gone 45 games, 56 games, 55 games, 18 games. He simply cannot stay on the ice. Right. And if I'm trading for, in any capacity, what should be touted as a elite goal scorer, a guy who scores goals, I want that guy on the ice in the lineup. And if he can't do that, then he just doesn't benefit. He doesn't benefit the team. You're right. At one point,
and is the fit right? Like,
and that's the thing too. Like,
it feels like the fit's wrong.
And it seems like there's been issues because it was Winnipeg first, and now, and granted, it's Columbus, and I know we've had a handful of people go to Columbus and kind of, it seemed like, lose interest at times, and maybe that's an organizational thing or what it could be. But if it's a player thing, 2 teams now in a rather short NHL career, I haven't really heard a lot of, God, Patrik Laine is out on the ice late after practice, or like they lost and he came in early the next day to work.
He's been miserable there. Yeah.
He doesn't seem like a guy that is as engaged. And so as good as he probably could be if things worked with a change of scenery. I'm more concerned about an effect on the locker room, not being a good fit chemistry wise. And just, you're going to commit money to someone that just isn't going to play the majority of the games.
Yeah, and the return is going to probably be a prospect or 2 or draft picks. And I don't want to I don't want to add him to a team that, in my opinion, is not set to win yet, which is absolutely fine. But it feels like if someone's going to take a chance, it should be a contender where he can slot in at first, let's say on the 3rd line, and then get, develop from there. This is the type of player I feel that you add, one, when your culture is just great, because he can then come into a culture that's settled. But 2, that you add when you're on the precipice of winning a championship, when you think that you're going to make a run. And I much prefer what the Wild is doing now, which is sort of a realization. Guerin wants to win bad, and I get that. But I think that you have to be cognizant of the fact that there are times to go in And there are times to say, you know what, we're not going to give up much for a guy who, as you said, can't stay on the ice, has had chemistry issues. And I don't know, to your point, if that's the Jackets' fault or his fault or a combination of both. But yeah, I'm out. I was surprised by that, and I'm out on that one.
You know who?
Yeah, sorry.
Before you move on, he seems like a perfect trade candidate for the Vegas Golden Knights. Like that just seems like the most they kind of have.
They go get everybody.
And that's the thing, they do, but they're in a spot where it's like, yeah, we kind of wanted, we've committed to this trying to win early thing, and they have, credit to them, but it seems like somehow they're going to get him for relatively cheap, and Mark Stone is going to go back on LTIR, so they're going to make it work and all this other stuff. So that is like the one. Well, it's going to funnel Laine to Vegas at some point.
He'll be cheap if you don't ask the Blue Jacket to pick up a bunch of his cap space. He's cheaper.
Oh yeah, big time.
Like he'll be cheap then. Mm-hmm. If you do what was written about by Russo here, it's expensive, and that's where I draw a line and say I'm not giving up any future assets for a guy who I think would come in as a big question mark. All right, two things before we wrap here. One, how surprised were you to see your guy Cole Eiserman fall to the Islanders at the 20th pick? Now you were on to his deficiencies or what scared teams, so that he was going to probably drop, despite the fact that he sounds like a damn near a pure goal scorer. But I don't think anyone predicted, at least that I saw, that he was going to drop to 20.
I saw a couple like rumors that he might fall to like that 18-19 range, and I kind of shrugged it off because, like, I guess, and like maybe something's come out, and maybe he had just terrible pre-draft interviews or something along those lines and character issues. But the scoring ability is there, and I feel like that would have been cherished, especially after the Buium pick of like, he maybe falls to that mid-teen, but getting to 20 is crazy. So I was very shocked because I thought a lot of the positives in terms of scoring outweighed a lot of the deficiencies, but maybe it's just that bad. Maybe the like the behind the scenes stuff, people are looking at his game away from the puck and they're like, we just can't really do anything with this. We've got a one-trick pony and that's about it. But the pony's not even going to get to the gate for the starting gun. So I was pretty surprised he fell all the way to 20th. I mean, I expected him like 15-ish, but 20th is kind of crazy for that.
All right, and last thing, in 5 years, how much will not the Sharks, the Blackhawks, the Ducks especially, the Blue Jackets regret allowing Ivan Demidov, the right wing, who sounds like he wants to play here. He doesn't sound like he's going to, cause a bunch of roadblocks for a Russian. How much will they regret allowing him to drop to the Montreal Canadiens with the 5th pick?
The Blackhawks, I don't think are going to regret it too much, because I think that they're going to get a certified stud with Artem Levshunov. That is, I think I told you, like, I thought Demidov would be the second forward off the board, but if a team really values defense and having like a stud on the blue line, Levshunov is the guy. So I think the Blackhawks, even if he turns out really good, can live with that pick, because I think Levshunov's going to be great. The Ducks are going to regret it, and I can tell you that much right now. Beckett Seneca is a good prospect. He's flashy.
He was shocked.
But
did you see the look on that kid's face when he was drafted? He's like, me?
You know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of when the Wild took Philip Simonson or Philip Johansson. I can't even remember his name. I think it was Philip Simonson with like the 23rd pick in the first round.
Yeah.
And he's like, I didn't expect to go in the first round.
Johansson. Yeah. That was a Fenton pick, right?
Yes, that was a Fenton pick.
I think that was Fenton's first pick.
Columbus with Caden Lindstrom is good, and the thing is, he's a bigger body. He's like a power forward,
and he's a center.
Yes, and he's a center. So if you like the play of Anze Kopitar with more size, I think it's a fine pick. But Demidov, he's a highlight reel. He had expressed previously that he wanted to come play in the States.
Yep.
I don't understand the hiccup here on why you, as the Ducks, I don't understand why you pass on
Verbeek, man.
On him. Verbeek is gonna. I mean, that's gonna be a career defining, like flip of picks, because that's, I think in 5 years they're gonna say, how on earth did you not take Ivan Demidov? Because he wants to come here. Even the swagger walking up to the stage. Did you see that handoff of his
The
coat
handoff
to
of the coat, which one, and most of these guys look like kids. Like most of them look like I mean, Celebrini seriously looks like he's 13 still. And most of these kids were very like polite in their jacket because it was showgirls collecting them. And Demidov just had the swag, man. He looks and he looked like he could step on the ice and play in a regular season game in this league tomorrow.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
he's got that size. I mean, some of these guys, their shoulders are so small. Like you're like, okay, dude, you're a ways away from the pros. But yeah, Demidov had the definite swagger. So,
and I got one for you here before we wrap up super quickly.
Yes.
This was pointed out to me after the draft, or the first night of the draft, I should say, concluded. There was not a single team, and this is the first time in a long time, that no other club in their announcing of the pick congratulated the reigning Cup champions. Nobody said, "Hey, Florida Panthers, congrats on the Cup win."
Very odd.
What do you make of that? Anything, or is that just it gets too soon? Like they're still celebrating. I don't even think they've had a parade yet.
No, yeah, but no. It was weird. So here's my total guess, okay? Because it was every team. Like if a couple of teams had done it, I think it was weird that the rest of them didn't, because it's sort of a tradition. Yeah. I think these people were told to tighten it up on stage. I noticed that the shout outs to draft parties, which did take place at times, were much, it used to be, shout out to the tap house where our great fans are gathered. And it seemed to be much more brief now. So I think they said, and by the way, if they did, Gary Bettman, good job. I think they said tighten it up. And we all know that the Florida Panthers won the Cup. It seemed too universal to me not to have been an edict.
Yeah,
would every team hate the Panthers so much that they all agree not to say? No, I think what this was we are at the Sphere in Vegas, boys and girls, and we are it's going to be brevity. And I think it's 3 minutes between picks, right? It's pretty quick. So no, I think what we saw was a universal platform of, we don't need to hear you congratulate a freaking team that we all just saw hoist Lord Stanley's Cup. I loved it, because anything that shortens up a draft is good for me.
Yeah, I saw somebody on Twitter say that Bettman probably they were renting the Sphere by the hour, so they were like, let's get it moving.
Let's really not quick, exactly.
Really quick before we wrap up here, a couple names for the Wild. I think in the second round they have the 47th pick of the draft. I think they could go back at defense again. And if a couple names I would keep an eye on here is Harrison Brunnicke, Henry Muse, and Luca Morelli. Luca Morelli is probably my highest choice out of those three, but Henry Muse is fantastic as well. And keep an eye on, if you hear a Koivu get drafted, that's actually the lone number retired Nico Koivu's nephew, son of Saku Koivu. He's supposed to go either late second round or mid third round today.
Awesome stuff, Age. Great stuff. And I believe that across the board this morning, at least the first round pick, the Wild is getting a grade of A, which is good, because I think the farm system is looking really, really good. Now, all right, he's AJ. I'm Judd. We will see you soon on another edition of Judd's Hockey Show.